We just got a ton of news around Cyberpunk 2077, a ton of new details and actually a lot of screenshots around the game. Right now Gamescom is going on and a lot of this has been getting shared. I'll show you pretty much all these new screenshots, but also I can give you a bit of background since I was fortunate enough to see some of the gameplay that the screenshots were taken from. And then finally, what is probably the most anticipated news, we actually heard a bit about the gameplay drop for Cyberpunk 2077, exactly what time and day it's coming, and also how it's actually a little bit different. It wasn't exactly what was promised and why some users are kind of mad or upset about that. If you guys enjoy the content or just want to stay up to date with Cyberpunk news, you can leave a like or subscribe. When we actually do get this new gameplay drop, I'll do a full live stream and explain what we see, as fortunately it won't be my first time seeing it. But taking a look first at some of these new screenshots, we've been getting these progressively over the past few days. On the original tweet from the 20th that kind of kicked this whole thing off, we get this little code at the top. I think a lot of people were just kind of looking way too closely as to what this means, as I'm pretty sure it just means Gamescom 2019, which is going on right now, Cyberpunk 2077, and then screenshot batch 1 out of 3, and you see 7 screenshots in this batch. Since then, we've gotten the second wave, which is clearly labeled, and actually a third wave that doesn't have any labels on them, but I think that is the third and final wave of screenshots. So taking a closer look at these, most of them are actually around or from this new gameplay drop that is coming, and the one I got to see behind closed doors. So these enemies that you're constantly seeing throughout these screenshots that look pretty jacked or juiced up are actually known as the Animals. They're one of the gangs you could find in Night City, and really their gist is they want to boost their own physical ability using some in-game chems and also some other augmentations to just try and get as large and massive as possible. During a big chunk of the gameplay that will be debuted later on, we're actually raiding their headquarters, so you see a lot of combat with them, and that's going to be a good chunk of what you see in the gameplay again. In this, we could see a variety of actually pretty cool weapons, although I'll have more in that category later on. Many of these enemies actually relied or focused on melee, as you could see, although occasionally having a weapon of their own. And what you're seeing here is actually the fight against Sasquatch. This is the leader of the Animals, and basically it's going to be a boss fight after you cleared out most of this mall. She has this little core on her back that you have to shoot in the center of, and that will remove her armor, and then it's more just of a typical fight. Some of these other screenshots are around the same quest. This is actually going to be the precursor to fighting off the Animals. This is a member of the Voodoo Boys, and he's going to be the one that actually gives you the quest and tasks you with going through that mall. And in one of the screenshots, pretty cool, you could actually see one of the speech checks that is registered. Seemingly we do have enough of a technical skill to actually satisfy it, but we saw several of these all throughout the gameplay, and it certainly is present in this game. We also see this Netwatch agent. He was actually in the same mall that you just clear through after you go through the boss battle. You will encounter him. You have some options on how to handle or deal with him, but it is kind of the ending of the gameplay. Even further though, something else interesting you may have noticed from the screenshot is the mini-map in the bottom left corner, but also notably no compass wheel. In the previously released gameplay from last year, we saw a pretty clear-cut compass wheel at the top that would indicate some of the local objectives. Somebody curious about this actually reached out to CD Projekt, and they described how they're actually ditching the compass wheel in favor of a mini-map. Outside of that, some of the other screenshots we do see do give us a look at some of the vehicles that we will seemingly be able to own and drive. Vehicle ownership and actually being able to own a variety of different garages has been described in the past as a major part of this game. That's some of the major screenshots you might have seen pop up on Twitter. Hopefully I gave a little bit of additional context or background on what's happening in them, but there was actually some other screenshots that you probably missed as they weren't tweeted out by the official accounts. These were actually meant to show off ray tracing in this and were tweeted out by Nvidia, simply someone on a bike as well as a woman smoking. For the screenshot of the woman, we actually got a wider angle view from one of the press outlets that did get to see the game. It seems like that screenshot was exclusive to that press outlet. And outside of that, we actually got a screenshot of nanowire in action from a separate press outlet. This one also looking like an exclusive. This being pretty cool. In this whole gameplay, you see a lot of nanowire usage, and it seems like a very versatile tool. You could use it for assassinations in ranged mode, as you see right here, and some other things. Although outside of even that, as many of you guys do know, there actually is a cosplay contest going on around Cyberpunk. There's some pretty hefty rewards around the end of this one, so it definitely is something worth paying attention to. Plus, it's been giving us just a lot of cool content to consume over the past few weeks. But in order to actually aid people in creating their cosplay, CD Projekt has been releasing several images that kind of act as inspiration or reference. Most recently, actually releasing a set of some of the various weapons that will appear in Cyberpunk 2077. Now, as far as this image set goes, all we actually get from this are the names and makers of these various items. First, we see the Arasaka Mantis Blades. This is one we've seen a lot throughout some of the gameplay and even some of the trailers of Cyberpunk 2077. A pretty iconic one, but now, getting to see it close up, they look pretty awesome. Next up, we do have the Constitutional Arms M2067 Defender. This looking like a HMG of some kind, somewhat similar to what we're used to seeing in this category, but also quite a bit different, obviously taking inspiration from some other modern weapons. Then one we seemingly saw from some of the older gameplay is actually the Kang Tao G58 DN. This was that smart weapon that would actually lock on to enemies, then have tracer bullets to seek them. The Militech M10 AF Lexington that was also shown at the start of last year's gameplay. It looks like this one was really just a handgun that actually had a dual system, so you could either use it as a semi or burst fire. And then last but certainly not least, the Militech M221 Saratoga. This one in particular actually looking very similar to a lot of modern real life weapons, but another cool one and nice addition to the game. All of these in general are pretty high quality and I'm excited to use them. But now with all of that out of the way, that is a pretty good look at all the new screenshots or in-game content we have gotten a look at, although CD Projekt Red has also shared when we could expect to see more in-game content, such as when we should be getting a gameplay reveal. And this isn't exactly new. For a while now, it has been touted how the full gameplay, the 50 minutes that press got to see behind closed doors, and I was fortunate enough to see, would be eventually revealed to the public following PAX West. This being because they wanted to use this gameplay at each of the various conventions, so that being E3, Gamescom, PAX, and even some of the other smaller conventions they also attended. It'd be really painstaking to create a new gameplay for each of these, and if they release it to the public, everyone would have seen it by the time some of those later conventions popped up. It actually made a lot of sense, but of course requiring quite a bit of patience from the community. But earlier today, they actually announced how that's going to change. They're no longer going to be going that route, and rather, they're actually, one, not going to PAX West at all. They don't really get too detailed as to why they're going to be doing this. They mentioned that the cosplay contest meant to go on there will still occur, but that there will be no dev panel on site, as well as there were some logistic and creative reasons behind their decision to not attend. But even further, rather than showing the full 50 or so minutes of gameplay that the press and many people at the conventions got to see, they're actually only going to unveil a 15-minute edit of the gameplay. But to go along with this, there's going to be a bit of a developer Q&A and explaining some of the stuff we just saw. That's going to be presented on August 30th, so 8 days from now, at 11 a.m. Pacific time. They're going to present it on their official Twitch and Mixer channels. And just to shout myself out, as that does occur, I will be doing my own live stream over this and actually showcasing what is presented. So naturally, this news came as almost a little bit of a shock and a disappointment to many, and kind of pissed some people off. As I mentioned a bit earlier, it was pretty explicitly confirmed that that extended gameplay demo, the 50 or so minutes many people got to see behind closed doors, would in fact be released publicly during PAX West. But really, more so than anything else, I find all of this to be just kind of confusing. I would argue not attending PAX West is pretty understandable. Doing some of these conventions can be high intensity and exhausting, and the devs just wanting a break or to focus more on development time or other things behind the scenes does make sense. Although it is still pretty surprising to see a game this anticipated from a company this large to do a sort of last minute cancellation like this. Perhaps they saw something internally where some of these conventions simply weren't paying off, or it just wasn't worth the investment of their time. But on the other hand, I would say not showing the full 50-minute gameplay demo to me is actually a lot more surprising, because the real question to me is why? Why aren't they releasing another 50 minutes of gameplay for this highly anticipated game, similar to what they did literally just last year? That gameplay demo getting millions upon millions of views. There have been a ton of arguments passed around, one of the main ones being that it's too spoilery and they don't want to spoil so much of their game, even though it is fairly close to release, to which I would say that literally makes no sense. Even though I couldn't actually record the gameplay demo, I could tell you literally anything about it. I could share every spoiler I saw from that, and they're pretty much all out there to begin with. Some people have seen the gameplay demo 2-3 times at this point and have gotten very detailed in their reports on it. Obviously, that's not quite the same as getting to see it for yourself or having the footage right in front of you, but I just think that's a very odd argument, especially considering they're going to be showing snippets of this anyway. It's not like there was any major game-breaking spoilers that they're going to be able to cut out. Others have argued that it could have something to do with some negative reception. A couple of negative articles have popped up as people have seen the game a few more times. In general, the reception to this new gameplay demo wasn't as high as last year's, but last year's was literally through the roof, so it's a pretty hard bar to reach again. And although this could have some merit behind it, I don't think it makes a ton of sense either. Even though, yes, there have been some negative articles, things have been overwhelmingly positive. Most people are super happy with what they saw, and to me it'd be pretty shocking if they decide to not release the full demo simply because of some negative feedback. And again, back to that same argument, they're still showing 15 minutes. That's quite a bit of time. I can't imagine they're going to cut out all of the gunplay in totality because there was quite a bit of it. And really, one of the reasons I find this most surprising is actually due to that README letter we got a couple of months ago right after E3. In that, they pretty explicitly laid out why they weren't releasing the gameplay until later on, but seemed to have full intent of releasing it, very similar to last year. What could have happened over those 2 months that led to such a sharp change? And for me at least, I'm not too upset about it. Granted, I'm in a unique position where I actually got to see this gameplay once already, although I was still looking forward to the full 50-minute release. It's just one of those things that really strikes me as odd and a little confusing. I can't think of a good reason that CD Projekt wouldn't want this out there, especially considering how much positive reception they've been getting to it. A couple of negative articles are nothing when you look at the overwhelming support this game has been getting and seemingly will continue to get. Either way, one final announcement that did come out during this year's Gamescom was that Cyberpunk 2077 would actually be coming to Google Stadia.